Well, we've kind of passed around a little bit. Berkeley's moved on to York, where he has enough troops to defend himself from the Marshal. So the Marshal headed elsewhere. He grabbed Richard of York. He gets the Duke of York added to him. So we're kind of beginning to see these powerful factions. They can't really get a good grasp on each other at this point. And then with Somerset here, the Warden of the Northern Marches, and he's going to be heading up there, drew a card sending the king to Preston. Well, the king's already there, but it reminded me of something I forgot about. I'm supposed to reshuffle the deck on every embassy. That really shakes and randomizes things up a little bit. In the original game, before they added that option to the variants, and there may be too many reshuffles with the embassies, but the deck just didn't move. And by forcing the reshuffles, maybe they should only be with the Parliament must be summoned cards, and I've got to put something to mark that. I'm almost there, so I think I can remember. But there just wasn't enough there was a feeling that once you got through a certain amount of the deck, you knew certain plagues would happen and certain were free from you. Now with these reshuffles, and with their likelihood especially, you're never safe. So if you remember, hey, I got plagued in Bristol, I'm safe there for the rest of that whole deck. Well, that's not the case anymore, and it's even possible that it could just get shuffled up and you could be forced, you could end up having that plague come again at any time. Now, that can be both positive and negative. It's kind of neat to be able to play that memory game, but this certainly makes it more difficult, and it also makes it harder to predict. This is a special kind of card. It's an event. Parliament may be summoned by the Chancellor. Only the Chancellor player can even hold this. And he can only... This is what's weird. I believe he can only play it if there's no Soul King, but I may be mistaken about that. It doesn't look like it from the description. But it's just sort of a weird thing where only one player in the game, and he's not in the game right now, the person who holds the title of Chancellor can even pick the card up. Alright. And, well, we got one last leader, and he's going to try to find a place to hide. And that's going to be tough. He doesn't have a lot with him. He has 60, 110, 190, 220 strength points. He's got an extra title, but he can't use that. And he's got to try to find someplace safe to go. That's going to be tough for him. He doesn't have anything clearly available. Up here, well, he's facing the Warden of the Marches, who only has 190, so he's not going to be taking anything. So that might be the safest route to head. Alternatively, there are other places, but there are powerful factions with a lot of strength in play now. And he's got a very, very valuable character with him in terms of Henry. Here's one of the nasties. All ships lost at sea from gales at sea. This just sinks all the ships that are out there in the game. That's a painful, painful situation if you're sailing out there. There's one or two of them added into the variant deck, and they really do shake up the game. The storms at sea are one thing. Those guys make it so that you don't really want to go hide at sea. Well, as we move to this guy, he's playing the first boat in the game. He's playing the Nicholas ship of the Tower of London. He's giving that to Holland, his main character, but what he's planning on doing is getting Howard down here to join Holland, and then sail up to Scotland with Howard alone, so that he can grab these Scottish mercenaries that he has, which he can only get in Scotland. And we'll do that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Start sailing around, just to give them a little bit more troop strength. It's hard to get the Scottish and French mercenaries. You kind of have to play out of your way for them. But I forgot to do this last turn with these guys. They've gathered together in York, grabbed Richard. At this point, they're going to crown him. He's got actually 2 archbishops. He only needs 1. He's going to crown Richard, Duke of York, as King of England. And that means there is no Soul King. And the essential purpose to that is it weakens this fellow's parliamentary power. He has the ability, with a writ card, to summon Parliament. Well, now that's been stripped away, and no one has that ability until the Chancellor happens. And the Chancellor needs 2 cards to do that. He needs the Chancellor May Summon Parliament card as well. That takes just a weapon out of another person's hand. I wanted to note historically that Richard, Duke of York, never was actually crowned king. And in this game, he almost always is, because the way to get him is usually the Archbishop of York. It's hard, and he wasn't militarily defeated and driven over. He may have died before any faction completely controlled him. But his faction, he definitely was opposed to Henry. He just didn't take that step of crowning himself king in opposition. Anyway, we're swinging over to our Marshal. We're really in this kind of stasis position where people are just jockeying around. Nobody's done anything for a while. A round or two. There's no battles. People are trying to find places where they can be safe, and that's what a lot of this game's about. Not really engaging in active type military campaigns. Alright, well, we've swung around back to the beginning, and we had something which kind of disturbed the situation. A Scots raid here sent the Warden of the Marches up to the north. Okay, he didn't have to go far, but that stripped him away from Herbert, who's now kind of vulnerable. But nobody really wants to do these kind of pick-off moves at this point in the game. There's no real advantage to it. You weaken this guy, whoever you attack, but without the 100-point attack, you don't get the extra Kingmaker card. So that's what I'm talking about, where people don't really make many attacks. Now, we do have the Earl of Warwick setting siege to Coventry. He should have done that earlier. I don't know why he didn't. And, you have kind of more important people like Percy up here who could be a target. And there was some thought about maybe sending Greystoke's force over to attack that. But again, you're making an enemy who's not weak. And there's a decent chance in the advanced game that when you kill a titled noble, he comes back through the loyalty table. He'll come back on a 2 through 7. Likewise, a crowned royal heir may be impossible to kill for this reason when you try to execute them, or they may be saved in battle. Regular nobles and regular royal heirs are less likely to survive, but a 2 through 7 is the roll that brings Percy back if he's killed, and then you have an enemy, someone who you've pissed off for no good reason, and you're going to have to kind of try to explain that. On the other hand, knocking out the Warden of the Northern Marches, although he's a weaker power, might serve you some value. But talking to him and saying, look, I can wipe you out. We should look to our common interests in the next Parliament. You might end up finding an ally that you can work with throughout the game. That doesn't happen so much in my solitaire games because I forget the alliances, essentially, unless they're really, really strong and I place counters to indicate them. Alright, well, we open up the next round around with a French raid, Warden of the Cinque Ports to Rye with 2 ships. Well, that isn't good for this guy, but he's going to use the writ for its optional purpose to send someone with as many troops as the title, the Earl of Northumberland, down there. There's a couple of reasons for this. One is, it moves someone who was kind of out of the nature of where I wanted him to somewhere that I would be splitting up my force even more, that I think would break the siege, whatever. In fact, the siege might be broken. No, it's not. But it also makes a death check on someone who's not going to lose an office. So that's kind of cool. And we roll that, and that's fine. Anyway, on. Interesting situation for poor Holland up here. He has, I think, too many troops for the boat. But what I want to do is I can use my Scottish mercenaries to allow me to move into Scotland to pick them up. And I need to do this because I've got a long trip back that may or may not work. And now I've got to leave Scotland, I think. I don't think I can stay hidden in there just because I have the mercenaries. I'm not sure. I got to look at the refuge rules if I'm interested in that. But primarily, I just want the troops to come home, and this is the quickest way to get them, rather than shipping up with Howard. Anyway, I pull another card, and I'm going to get another noble. For a successful siege, Chester has fallen to Norfolk. Now, he's outside his strong area here, but he's got about equal troops to what the Marshal has under his big stack. So it seems kind of safe. He could have been attacked. But, you know, making an attack for little reason is kind of risky. And we don't see a lot of that going on here. The siege of Coventry goes on. It failed. We had a bad weather delays attack. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to check for deaths on these guys. I got 4 quick rolls to make there. That could be a big effect. I don't think that's the larger force. He needs a 2. All right. But what it did highlight was this catastrophe card. I forgot about those. What they do is they pull away all troops from titles and jobs. That's the majority of your forces in this game usually. So it can be a real game changer and really shake things up for powerful people, get them caught out in the open where they thought they were strong and bang, they get hit hard. Again, there's a lot of randomness in the game anyway, but they've thrown more in with the new event cards. New, circa 1978. And made the game, I think, better, but more random as well. So that you can't just predict, hey, I'm safe, I'm safe. These make a big, big advantage to the game. And I don't know if you can even, I don't know how easy it is to find these. But for me, they were the game changer that made this a much more enjoyable game and much less frozen. Little shake-up event here. We had a plague in Bristol, and he started sieging Carlisle. But this one moved the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's Bourchier here, kind of a weak lord, over to Canterbury. Now he's stripped away from his main faction, and there's kind of the question of, does this faction, which isn't that powerful, want to start walking its way anywhere, or are we just going to give this guy up, who could actually fall very easily to a siege again by someone like Warwick? But we actually see why it's bad to have the Marshal. The Marshal got called over to Blackheath. He didn't die. That would be an unlikely event, but generally happens a couple of times in the game from events. But it broke his siege of Coventry. So having, you know, someone who gets called around a lot is really painful, especially when you're playing with a lot of people. When you're playing in only 2 or 3 people or whatever, well, it's unlikely that your sieges are going to get broken up by events. And it's kind of a weird thing that the game kind of takes a very different flavor the more people you play with. I've never played this with less than 4, though, so I can't imagine the fun of it in small numbers. It might be a decent 3-player game. It's just I can't imagine. There seem to be better games for 3. One of the big things in this is that whole political aspect to it. All right, well, it's time for the ball game to really start. The Duke of Norfolk sees a couple of targets within range. All of them somewhat interesting. He has 180, 230 troops in hand, another 30 that he can build. He'd like to have those French foot soldiers for a big attack, but that's okay. So 260 strength points. One thing he sees is Holland here with 180. I could probably beat him, but let's see what better I can do. Over here, we got the Earl of Arundel with 80, 90, 100. I want him. This is weakening one of the powerful factions, but now the one last potentially good faction is this here, which is kind of weak at 50, 110, 180, 210, 240. That sounds big. That's going to be tough for me to hit. 180, 220, 230. I'm going to go after my big guy here. And my hope is, okay, look, if I just stomp him, that's great. But what if instead I don't kill off what I capture, but I can make some ransom demands? And ransom demands could include some of these cards, or it could include transferables that the faction owns, which essentially right now isn't a lot. It's just this, but it could be cards played, it could be cities. We'll see what the offer is, but at the very least, I can wipe him out, and I could take one of his cards as per that optional roll. So I'm going to move down. 1, 2, 3, I think, to here. And I get to declare an attack. Now, here's the problem. This guy's got a couple of free moves, which he can chip in with. He can only use one per turn. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if he uses both of these, he could bring 2 leaders up. But I think what I'm going to just do is I'm only going to bring Warwick up, assuming nothing else changes. Well, now we get to deploy for battle, and here we get to see the advanced combat system in play. And I'll probably screw this up because I didn't bother really reading the rules for it. I vaguely remember it, and probably vaguely also remember it with changes that I've put into play. But what we're going to do is drop some kind of counter to remind us where the battle is. And then we set the troops up. Over here. The first thing we have to do is see if there's bad weather, and there is not. So we're going to have a fight. That doesn't count as an embassy, so it doesn't cause a reshuffle. It has to actually be being used as an embassy to force a reshuffle. Okay. So now, the attacker in this case is going to be Warwick because he brought troops into play. And for this, what he's going to do is he has to set up first, I believe. And I think he has to fill the first line. No. So I'm going to set up kind of like this. And now on this side, I get to set up Mowbray's my big hitter at 100. Suffolk at 80 is equal to Arundel. And I want to throw additional forces into play. And now, what we're going to do is resolve these battles one at a time. Now, it could have been staggered, so there were 2 here and 2 on this side, and then it would be kind of attacks on each side. That just comes out kind of weird, so we're going to just pair it up like this. Both sides get to play some cards, and let's see what we got. Right, well, let's look at the battle first. Right here we have Arundel at 80 versus Suffolk at 80. That's a 1-to-1. Who's attacking here? I'm trying to remember. Yeah, you have the option to attack. So our attacker is actually Warwick, even though it's not his turn, I think. Okay. That's how I'm doing it. I don't know. In which case, he's got 80 and 10 for Hastings if he wants to declare an attack. And he's facing 80. Does he have troops that he wants to commit? Not terribly. So we're going to hold off. And now what we do is we have the option of attacking here, where I have 150 to Mowbray's 100. I want to do this attack. And the defender gets odds shifted in his favor. So this is what we're seeing here. 170 to 140. And, well, somewhere or another I got a calculator. I can try to figure out the odds for that. Because there's things like 5 to 4. I don't know what that means. We went it up 0.8. It's the other direction. 140 divided by 170 comes out as 0.8, a little over 0.8. So we've got that 5 to 4 beat, but we don't have the 3 to 2 odds. So in order to do this, and I gotta keep an eye on the time here, what if I go up to 190 to 140? So what we end up with is 140 divided by 190. And we're at 0.7. That's still not going to be our 3 to 2 level. So I'm not really going to add anything. What's his feeling? Well, he was at 140. He can break it up to even by putting these troops with Scrub. And now we just want to up our forces, and we have Roos there. Well, we'll give them to Neville, because if we lose Neville, we've kind of lost the battle. And now we flip a battle. We've got the majority, but I don't think 5 to 4. We get a bad weather delays attack. That's not a real bad weather delays attack, though. So I think there's still a death chance on these, and we check this out. So all these leaders were involved. Let's start with Scrope. He's from the smaller side. By the way, I could have added more from here, but I don't have them. So he's from the smaller side, so he needs a 2, 3, or 12 to die. He doesn't get that. Same with Mowbray. And then we go over to Warwick, who needs a 2, and Roos. That's our first round. Now we swing the attack over to here. Now he gets odds rounded in his favor, because he's the original defender here, even though it's his turn, because Neville decided to attack. Now I know what's here, and I gotta kind of add and compare. So I've got 140, 60. I know that I don't have equal odds here, and I'm pinned down, so I can't actually attack somewhere else. What do I have here? I have 80, 90, and he's got probably the same. So I've got a problem here. I've got no way out of this battle. I can't increase my odds. And I'll look at the rules and make sure, because I don't think this was the case. So, because I think I can move position-wise. Maybe. Let me see how this works. Actually, I have 2 shifts in my favor because I have Edward and I'm the defender. So this was a majority. He couldn't actually succeed here, even though he's the larger force. And I screwed that whole thing up. I'll just continue from where I am. But what I may want to do, I have a smaller force here. I think I've got equal here, so that can't really attack. I could shift, say this guy down here and this guy to the back here, and increase my odds. But I'm going to stand as I am. I think these guys are even. And make the attack here. Because I'm outnumbered by a majority victory. But 2 shifts up means I go from majority up to majority in my favor, and then to 5 to 4. I'm good with that. So I'm just making an attack there. I get a vacillating noble. Uh-oh. In combat, when you draw one of these... Oh boy. Yeah, I'm going to load this up and split here so that I can come back and describe. Okay, so for that vacillating noble event, what's going to happen is first, and there's different ways to handle each of these options. You have to kind of scan through to decide. First thing that happens is we see which force is affected, the weaker or stronger. I'm not sure which one's stronger at this point. This is at 180, 190, 260. And this one's at 150, 230, 260. We're even. So I'd say it's random. Completely random which force is going. Odd, even, nobody's got a chance to add more troops. It's going to be the Duke of Norfolk who's affected. It's a random noble of his. 1, 2, 3, 4. Could be anyone. It'll be the Duke himself who might be leaving. Alright, now, the odds are essentially 1 to 1, even. On, I would say, a 2 through 6, just as majority odds, he's going to switch sides, and on a 1, he leaves. All right, so the Duke of Norfolk has just switched over to this side. He's become a member of this faction in the midst of this battle. Now, this was pretty much his faction, so what the hell? But that's what happened on the battle determination. He was rolling for an attack. We're just going to slip him over here, and things look really, really bad for Paul now. So, we go over. We have to slide someone up, and we go over to this side of things. We're going to say the battle just didn't happen because of that convergent switching of sides. And, well, now we have attacks we can make, and we're going to make this combined attack against him. And we'll see what our odds are. This is poor little Scrope, who's got 40, 50, 60, 70 strength points, and he's facing 150, 170, 270. 270 sounds like 3 to 1. Well, it's actually between 3 and 4 to 1 with a shift in both directions. So we're calling that a 3 to 1 attack. We're not going to make the attack here. So we flip it 2 to 1. That's a victory. So we have captured Scrope. Now we make some death checks. First for Scrope. He's fine. And now for Neville, Roos, and then Mowbray. And they're all fine. And things are looking very, very bad because Paul can't get away. It's going to be his attack. The best he can do is launch an attack here. So he's going to do that. At the very least, he gets majority even if it's even. So we'll flip this over. And he's got 90. And Fitzallen shows up as well with 90. Neither has any troops they can add. So it ends up as a majority victory card. We'll see where that ends. No. We make a check for Paul. We make a check for Cromwell. And checks for Fitzallen and Hastings. Now we're back here. Well, this is an uglier situation. We want to get some big forces into play here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift these guys and these guys. And now I've got these 4 hitting the wing here. So I've got Neville at 170, 250, 350. Actually, I'm forgetting the towns here. Let's add them in. 410 and Hastings 420. Facing... it looks like 90. 420 for 90. Not quite 5 to 1, so we got a 4 to 1. Shifts in both directions, so no big deal. Let's draw it and see what happens. Bad weather delays attack. Okay, so we get to do the kill checks. Cromwell. 3. Cromwell's dead. And we'll check him after the battle. Paul. Nope. Neville. And Arundel. And like you can see, there's a lot of opportunities here still for some shakeup, but it's pretty guaranteed at this point. All right. That was the defending side's attack. Now we swing back over and we're going to make this attack again. It's only 80 for Paul. Let's see, 150, 170, 190, 270, 370, 410, 420 to 80. That sounds like 5 to 1, shifting both ways. That's a victory. Just check checking some deaths here. Alright, so now Paul's been captured as well. The battle is over. Cromwell's dead. Let's see what happens to him. On a 2 through 5, on a 2 through 7, no. And he's not killed by a plague or raid or revolt. So Cromwell is out. He does not return. He goes to the bottom of the deck. He'll be reshuffled. This was a significant victory, which I would say gives the little green acorn over to their side. And now they have the option. Now, if they kill Scrope, these soldiers go away. But now Scrope and company and Suffolk can maybe come to some sort of deal with this faction. Although they attacked them and probably are not very well received. So it's going to have to be something decent. On the other hand, just killing the leaders doesn't do you any good as the winner. In the end of Fairly Minor Ransom, they got the best thing they could out of this battle. Oh, Lancaster Swansea change hands. Some of these things change hands. So I've got to give up some of these cities. They got the best thing just off the events of the battle. The other thing, they were given the mercenaries as well as a writ. And the Acorn was allowed to keep their 2 leaders. Not terribly thrilled by this, but I don't think there are any hard feelings. Neville's kind of happy he was attacked, to tell you the truth. He's now got a royal heir, which he didn't have before, and a new leader who's very powerful. And I've got to convert the rest of those things. And then his card draw goes to him as well, which would have happened no matter what, so that's not really part of the deal. And then we go over here. Now I'm going to load this one up.